Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very special episode of Get Reelisms podcast. We are joined by very, very talented people. We're going to have a couple more joining in, in the meantime, during the course of our show. This is our Black Lives Matter movement episode. We are talking about this movement that is in the current state that we're in with very talented African-American filmmakers. So we're going to get things started. My name is Adam Chase Rennie.
I am Christine Chen.
All right. And go ahead, Patrick, and introduce yourself, and then Chinwe will go next.
Sure. My name's Patrick Grover. I'm a local Austin actor. As far as the subject matter that we're talking about today and how I am connected to it, really it's there's no real expertise necessarily here. I am just a Black man in America who was himself silent for a very long period of time and got tired of not talking and really haven't shut up for the past week and a half now. So this is a great outlet for me. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yay, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. And Chinwe, how's it going with you?
Hey, I'm Chinwe.
Sorry.
You're good. I am a filmmaker here in Austin, a writer, director, and editor. I am Nigerian born, but I've lived in the country since 1997. Being Black, I have all these intersections of being an immigrant and coming to the country with the third perspective of kind of how everything's been going. So my relationship to the movement is just one, being Black, and then also living in different communities and then understanding how other people's relationship with police is differed a lot. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And how long have you both been in the industry, in the film industry?
I've professionally speaking, I've been in the industry since 2009. So coming up on 11 and a half years
11
now.
years, right on. Congrats.
Yeah, yes, just amazingly. I don't know how, but still kicking.
What about you, Chinwe?
So 2013 is when I would say I officially joined the industry, because that's when I was on a professional film set and got paid and did all that stuff. But throughout that, I just kind of been more indie filmmaker.
Yeah. And you wrote, how many scripts have you wrote? You said you're a writer as well.
Yeah. So I can't keep track, but I know it's not that many scripts. But
you just writing scripts.
Yeah. No. I basically write things that I can direct. So I would say I've directed 3 short films that I've written, and maybe 3 or 4 sketches that I have somewhere on YouTube or something out there.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That's great. We're actually now being joined by Tommy Hobson.
Yay, Tommy! Yay.
He is joining us right now.
Yeah, you guys are all from really diverse backgrounds. Hi, Tommy!
Hello.
Hello. So
hello, sir.
It's perfect timing. It's actually your time to introduce yourself.
Oh, great. I kept saying 2 p.m. and my partner was like, "Why are you rushing?" I was like, "Because it's 2 p.m. Central Time." I keep forgetting.
This is a podcast. We're good.
Yes. What do I need to say? How are we introducing?
Yeah, just tell us about who you are. And I was just saying, everybody here has really diverse perspectives. So we have Patrick, who is a local Austin filmmaker and actor. Chinwe, who's a local female filmmaker, and then you, who is you explain.
Yes. I guess Thomas Hobson, but I go by Tommy. That's what everyone calls me. I'm LA-based actor. Been acting. Holy crap. My birthday is Monday, and that will make it 32 years.
Happy early birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. And I know a lot of people have had birthdays, so it's not unique, but I did not think that like I'd still be in a pandemic situation on my birthday. And I definitely didn't factor in a full-on race revolution. So people keep asking me what I plan on doing. And I'm like, I just, I'm going to sit in my house and, try to stay healthy and try to support the cause as much as I can. But yeah, so I've been acting my whole life. And I think most people who have like young kids, I did a Nickelodeon show for a really long time called Fresh Be Banned, which I always tell people it's kind of an interesting portal into this world because on top of doing 60 episodes of the show, we also did 300 concerts. It was a musical show. And so to sort of go around America and do sold out concerts from LA through the Midwest to New York and sort of see across America, and meet children and sort of get to learn that like these really are things that are implanted on children. These kids are so pure and so wonderful and loved me unconditionally. And there were many moments when I thought, wow, like 10 years from now, what will you be?
Go to Facebook, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And you said you've been acting for over 30 years, right?
Yes, I got my first professional acting job when I was 6 years old. I have two parents who are
crazy.
Yeah, my parents are phenomenal human beings and not artists at all. But we're like, if this is what he wants to do, because I have always been a very strong-willed person. Yeah. They were like, he wants to do it. Let's let him try it out. And but there were rules, very specific rules, behavior, chores, grades, college. There were very non-negotiable things that had to happen. But it was my extracurricular until it became my job as an adult. So, yeah.
Yeah. I guess this is, so we wanted to have this because we wanted it to be a very chilled out, kind of like just some friends gathered to just chat about what's going on right now. And we wanted it to be a safe place for people to ask questions and just to learn and listen, because you guys know best what you guys are dealing with, and it's our time to listen and to just educate it. Because I know that I personally have friends who are just almost frozen. They want to help, but they don't know how to, or they feel like if they post something, then they get in trouble because it's not sensitive enough, or if they don't post something, then they get mad. Then people get mad at them for not posting and speaking up. So I guess we'll just let it open and we'll see how this goes, and let's just talk. Like, what are your feelings with what's going on right now, and how is it affecting where you guys are living, or how has it affected you since birth? I don't know.
So like, who wants to go first?
It's like, wow, where do we begin?
Wow.
Anyone can jump in.
I will say this. I have a friend. We had a conversation 2 nights ago. He was out at the LA protest downtown a couple of days ago, and he mentioned to me. He said, "I have to ask you a question. As one of my dearest friends, like, how do you feel about me being on the front line and like marching today?" And I told him, I said, "Listen, I think that like." There are 2 thoughts I have on that immediately. The first is that your presence as a non-Black person at a rally literally has the power to de-escalate tension. That what we are talking about is literally happening in front of our eyes, and we're watching police specifically target Black protesters, and then a white person steps up front, and a lot of times that de-escalates tension. So your presence is actually able to depressurize the situation. I said, number 2, unfortunately, as a minority race, we have been screaming for 400 years. We've been up until the civil rights movement and now beyond. And you have these cycles every 10 or so years where something catastrophic happens. There's a movement, Black people hit the streets, we demand change, we're promised change, nothing happens, rinse and repeat. I said, so we have taken it as far as we can. And I do understand that there's this idea that like, it would be great if we could do this on our own, so that it's simply our victory. But we are a minority. And the thing that even like as a queer person as well, the thing that I've realized is that people understand things that directly relate to them. And so if you can see someone who looks like you, you're immediately inclined to more empathy to that thing. And so I told him, I said, I appreciate you being out there. And you're not out there trying to win followers on Instagram or have, you know, tweetable moments. You're literally just out there showing support. And he said that he was being sort of attacked by some of his followers for being an opportunist. And I said, well, listen, at this point right now, and here's the real fun thing, there are no right answers. And I think that people who are sitting at home waiting to have the right inspirational word to type or to say so that they don't get interactions with people that are negative, that's not going to happen. There are no rules right now. So you say something. If you said something wrong, guess what? Someone's going to tell you, and you're going to have to say, I'm sorry, I was trying to be this, and I see what you're saying. And, you know, my first therapy session with my new therapist last night, and she's a white woman, and we were talking about this. And she said, do you think you can have me as your therapist? Do you think I have access to this particular? I said, no. I mean, are there any Black people there? I don't know. I've only met you. I said, but here's my thing. Maybe you don't know enough about this. So maybe through my trauma that I'm sharing with you, you know, you can learn. And I think that's the thing. People can't be scared to be wrong if your heart is in the right place. I think the wrong thing to do is to be so scared of being wrong that you do nothing and that you say nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that Tommy just said, particularly that last part, because silence has been the status quo basically since the beginning. And it can't be that way anymore. It really can't. And the unease that I see within my friends who are white, who are asking some of the same questions of how can I help? I don't know how I can help. Should I be posting the black square icon on my profile because does that is that enough, or is that too much? And really, the fact that you're even asking is a huge improvement upon where we were previously, because that means that you're starting to be aware. And once you're starting to be aware, that triggers curiosity. And once curiosity hits, you're actually asking questions, which leads to education, which leads to some manner or form of empathy. And that's really what's been missing, I feel like, with every other moment where we've had one of these tragedies happen, like Tommy mentioned with Tamir Rice. There was outrage amongst the Black community, and it was in the news cycle for about 48 to 96 hours, and then it was done. And then next thing you know, it's Michael Brown and Eric Garner. And God, I feel crappy when I blank on the names of the people who have lost their lives to police violence, but it says something that I have to struggle to come up with the number of people that have lost their lives to police violence. I always tell my white friends that any support is welcome support. It's support with action is preferable, but even if you're just putting that little black square up on your icon on Facebook or Instagram or what have you, that could be seen by somebody else and cause them to perhaps reevaluate how they are viewing the movement that is currently happening. And that's part of the reason why I did the challenge on Facebook about Ask a Black Person, because I feel like we always get so caught up and kind of worried about being non-PC about when it comes to asking questions that we don't know about other cultures. And Black people we don't always necessarily feel like answering certain questions. white people are unsure about whether or not they can ask certain questions. So I wanted to just take that moment to start a dialogue and make people feel like they're in a safe environment, in a safe space, to where nothing is off limits as long as it comes from a perspective of being genuinely curious, of being respectable. And I thought that it was a great success, and helped me to realize just how much I really don't know myself about how to handle all of this. And that's something that was really eye-opening for me, because it's not even something that we as Black people necessarily have all the answers to. But I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. It's important for us to know that even if we don't have all the answers to the challenges that we're facing, that we're at least willing to try and tackle them. Mm-hmm. Because once we get bogged down in arguments about what is or is not the right way to protest, or is not the right way to show support, then we're losing track of the message. And the message is what is most important at the end of the day. I don't care how you support, please. That's all that matters to me. It really is.
Yeah. I'm going to follow up with a question, but before I do that, I wanted to just introduce Kristi. Do you want to say hi and who you are?
I'm sorry, I'm late.
It's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Sorry.
We're just having a conversation.
I had app update issues, but yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Kristi Woodard. I am a filmmaker from Shreveport, Louisiana. I have relocated to Newark, but now I'm kind of stuck in Shreveport until I can get back up there. I have no clue what has transpired, so I'm just gonna, that's
Yeah. No worries. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. So actually, Patrick, my follow-up question was, what were some questions that were asked that you were surprised about, or that was interesting?
One in particular was a question about the relationship between the Black community and the LGBTQ community, and how it hasn't always been good, to put it lightly, and why that is, for one, and what we can do in order to make it better. And I've loved that question, because it's something that I've never fully understood, why, at least from my perspective growing up. I grew up Southern Baptist. We went to a small church with just fans, no AC. All the women had hats. They were they had the fans. We had the deacons, the whole 9 yards. And you would hear the preacher go up every Sunday and condemn the idea of homosexuality as it is mortal sin that will condemn you to the depths of hell forever. And it boggled my mind that we, the Black community, knowing all of the persecution and discrimination that we had gone through up until that point, and still go through up until this day, seemed so unwilling to show empathy and support for the LGBTQ community, who have been going through some of the exact same things. We should, I believe I said something along the lines of being allies in our persecution.
Yeah, this is actually a great opportunity, because Tommy is a perfect person to
please, Tommy, feel free to take it away, because at a certain point I get out over my skis and I'm losing the conversation.
No, I was just agreeing. Growing up in LA, we were and continue to be like people who are God-fearing people. But I was blessed to have parents who taught me specifically that my mom used to say that the Bible is a game of telephone. And she's like, and you know how like you used to, as a kid, we used to pass the message down, and by the time you got to the end of the line, something had been lost along the way. And like maybe some of the essence was still there, but the message was different. And she said, and that's the Bible. She said, because the Bible has been, even if you believe that it's divinely inspired in its origins, over time, it's been retranslated, watered down, beefed up, you know, twisted for whatever King James wanted in that particular time, like all of those kinds of things. And so she said, basically, which is so funny when your parents are talking to you when you're like 12 and you don't realize what they're saying to you until you're like coming out to them in your 20s and you're like, oh, you were trying to help me understand that like there's nothing wrong with me, and that like this book that people use to persecute me is the same book that was used to justify enslaving my people.
Yes.
That the text is always manipulated for what a bad person might need it for. And that you have like a chapter in the Old Testament people always go back to where they're like, oh, it says right here, a man shall not lay with a man. But like there are verses after that that talk about haircuts and tattoos and the kinds of seafood you're not allowed to eat. And we just casually ignore all of those things. And so for me, it's always been a slippery slope, because I tell people like, I wake up every day and there are 3 things I have no control over. And I've had no control over them now for almost 38 years. I'm a man, I'm Black, I'm gay. Those are 3 things that I came onto this earthly plane with, that were not choices that I could make, because I'm a very intelligent person and I make good choices. And in terms of choices, to be clear, I love everything about who I am, but if you're sitting down and talking about choices, I'd be a straight cisgendered white man if I could choose, because life would be easier for me. So why would to imply that like I have a choice in my sexuality or to persecute me for my race, like is to imply that I woke up one day and thought, wouldn't it be great if I made my life terrible? Wouldn't it be great if I woke up today and I decided that it'd be really great if I don't know in any given moment if your look at me is because I held my partner's hand or because I'm Black or both? That like I've been on airplanes where I fell asleep and my head landed on my boyfriend's shoulder, and the woman next to me, I woke up and I reached down to grab my bag and I grazed her leg, and she screamed and jumped away from me and said that she didn't want a gay person to touch her. You know, and I was like, wow. And I do find, and I think that therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists, you know, can speak to this more than me. I do think that like what the majority has done a great job of throughout history is turning minority groups against each other. Because if minority groups figured out that they are actually treated the same, and that there are strengths in their numbers, that if you look at Asian population, Black population, Hispanic population, Native American population, gay population, as individual things, they are small numbers. If you combine those into one group, it's the reason why there's so many letters in the LGBTQ. You know, there's strength in the numbers. Each of those letters is more people to fight with you. And what the majority has done a great job of is convincing us that we are different. And then as minorities, we fight so hard for the little nuggets we get that then we turn on other people because no, I don't want to be lumped in with that because I made it over here as this. And so that needs to fight its own battle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that I'm happy that it's become a part of this, because, you know, if you say Black Lives Matter, but you don't lose faith in that when you find out that a group of Black men beat a trans woman to death in the midst of all of this, then what are we doing? It's not just white cops that are beating Black men and killing them. There are Black and brown cops doing it as well. Everyone has to be accountable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think will help to unite these individual minority groups together to be able to fight against obviously systemic racism?
Well, in the movie, in the movie version, I'd say we'd recognize a common enemy,
Yeah.
Nothing unites groups of people like a common enemy. And unfortunately, maybe there's too many common enemies to unite. I've got one super enemy that I'd love us all to unite against. He's orange, and my mom won't say his name.
Oh, right. I mean, that's a common enemy. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm.
No.
This is the first time I've gotten to really talk about this outside of like my friendship circle. So I'm just like
I mean, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of the podcast. I mean, I always rattle off things that I don't know, and Christine's usually the one to correct me on most things. So this is just us. This is just us talking, and the floor is open to all you guys. So
yes, I'm curious. With the other panelists who are here, I was. Like I said, I just started going to therapy a year ago. I suggest for any human that they do it, especially for Black and brown skin folks, because what I'm realizing through therapy is the amount of trauma that I carry just from daily existence. And I was saying to my new that I didn't really realize, because I thought in the moment that I handled them well and I moved on from them. And then as I was saying to my therapist last night, who is brand new because my regular therapist is on a break until October. And I'm like, cool, I'm trying to learn to trust you. Here we go. Because this, but I told her, I said that like, when these things happen, the paralyzing thing that happens to me is that all of a sudden, every dark memory, every tragic experience, every frightening moment that I've ever had with an authority figure, a police officer, whatever, comes flooding back to the front of my brain, and it's overwhelming. It's reliving the trauma. So when I get wonderful meaning text messages from friends who are like, hey, I'm here for you, I'm an ally, hope you're okay, I'm like, I'm really not right now, because I'm reliving every single microaggression. I'm reliving the time that the police pulled me over for no reason in a very nice neighborhood and pulled me and my 3 Black friends out of the car and accused all of us of being the Koreatown rapists, even though we look nothing alike. And we're demanding DNA samples, and we're demanding to know where I'd been. And I was like, all I could think to say in the moment was, I'm on my way to West Hollywood.
Right.
So I'm not a person who would, even with consent, sleep with a woman. Also, I've been at that point. I just graduated from Yale. The other 2 Black guys in the car with me were also recently graduated from Yale, and it's like, if you've never had an experience of feeling like you had to throw the kitchen sink at someone to prove that you are something special, that you are not what they've decided you are, that now I'm telling you where I went to college, I'm telling you my sexual preference, which at that time I hadn't even told my parents yet, like all of these traumatic things come back to me. And I'm just curious if any of you are having, if that's just a common experience, because obviously my therapist, she can't relate. So
I know on social media, I've had people, Black and white people, ask me, when was the first time I experienced racism? Have y'all gotten that question yet?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you were talking about. Stuff started flooding back to me as early as elementary school of microaggressions that I didn't understand until I was an adult, And it's just reliving a lot of things. And like you were talking about, the 3 things that people know about you. And I was telling someone the other day, that I'm Black and that I'm a Black woman. That's all you know before you have a conversation with me. But that alone gets me, sexism, racism on a daily basis. Yes. And ingesting so much of it recently has all of that. Generational trauma is real. If y'all don't understand that, the generational racism has caused a generational trauma.
Yes.
And y'all need to understand that about, not just us, Native Americans, but specifically right now, Black people. And so, I've had all of these emotions along with trying to fight the fight, dealing with that inner turmoil.
Yeah. So for me, as somebody who's an immigrant, I think for me, I went through most of my life being oblivious when racism was happening to me, if that makes sense. it wasn't until maybe a couple years ago when maybe, you know, the Black Lives Matter movements are happening, then it started clicking a lot more that, oh, that shit wasn't because they didn't like me as an individual. It was because of an overall like biases or something like that. And I think the first time that flashback happened was we immigrated to Baltimore, and Baltimore is predominantly the area we were in, predominantly the Black area. My elementary is all Black, so I didn't experience anything other than, you know, people weird xenophobia at times, but nothing egregious, but just like, yo, your food is funny looking. But then we moved to a predominantly white neighborhood in middle school, 6th grade, and then I had an identity crisis. The tone of my voice, you know, I've always had this tone, and I was always accused of, you know, sounding white. I'm like, no, this is like, I come from, yeah, so like, I'm from Nigeria. I've always sounded like this. But I heard that first when I moved to this predominantly white school. They said, like, how do you sound like that? You trying to act, like act white. I sound Blacker than you. So that's one thing. But then I remember a specific moment where I had an identity crisis when people were starting accusing me that I wasn't Black. So then I started acting up the Blackness, and I had a writing prompt, and I know what I intentionally wrote it in a way that made it like I wrote a writing prompt, and the languages, you know, I spiced it up a little bit more than I know I would have. And when the teacher was reading back to it, and no one had, they didn't have our name on it. So the teacher read it. The first line, she was like, "Oh, did you write this? I can tell you wrote this." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" It's like, it just sounds very urban. And I was like, okay. And so I brushed that off. I was like, and I think initially I was like, oh, well, that's good. That's like what I really wanted it to be. But she didn't need it like a compliment. And I just remember like that weird compliment. Well, to me, that weird comment that sounded like a compliment, and realizing that no, that teacher was being a fucking asshole about my writing and talking about how I was being too ghetto sounding in my writing. But as I kind of like unpacked some of my past histories with identity and race, I'm also in the camp of somebody who's more so listening and learning, because the history of this country is something I learned through my education system, and is usually through like, you know, the white teachers and people who, you know, glazed through civil rights movements, glazed through the Reconstruction era, glazed through. I remember one time I asked, "Who's Malcolm X?" to my teacher, and I remember her response was just the opposite of everything that I think I knew at that point. She's like, "Oh, you know, this anti-white segregationist activist." And I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound right." And so like I kind of got that information through my upbringing, and then not until I went to college. And so like my parents can't teach me civil rights, like they couldn't teach me this stuff because they didn't, you know, they don't know anything about this. So it was until like my 20s when I started unlearning basically everything I've learned, and then start asking more questions, because I just wasn't exposed or aware of what the history of this country is.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the vast majority of my life, I've felt in some ways sort of lost in terms of my identity as a Black man. Growing up in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, my parents, I went from first grade through 6th grade, I was at all white private schools. And then I'm still not 100% sure as to the reason for it. I think my mother just got a little bit worried that I was losing my quote unquote Blackness. And then I got turned around, and for 7th through 8th grade and most of 9th grade was at all black public schools. And it was it was a wild sort of clusterfuck in a lot of ways to help. It sort of instilled in me this feeling of never really belonging anywhere in particular, because I stood out for obvious reasons at the all-white private school, where there was, no joke, there was 2 of us, me and my sister, and then 3 when my little brother came and went there too. And then going to all black public schools in middle school, and as experiencing some of the same things Chinwe was pointing out, where black kids would stare at me when I spoke like I was doing a magic trick or something like that. Like, I don't understand how you're talking like that, and why you look the way you do, and why you're walking the way that you walk. And it helped me in some ways, because I've never, the feeling of being lost and not knowing exactly how I should identify myself and what it means to actually be black, has instilled a sense of longing and wanting to search for how I can, it's going to sound bad, but how I can best prove myself as a black person. And I don't mean that so much in the negative context of trying to put on something that I'm not, but just doing my best to show that being black is who I am, but it's not all that I am. And gosh, I'm bad at this.
No, this is fascinating.
No, I'm trying to come up with this as I'm talking. But it's been hard, because for the longest time, I didn't know. I felt like I couldn't figure out a way to completely connect with with the African American community and culture as a whole. And in a weird way, right around 2013, so God, I was 26, 27 at the time, when it started when these moments of police brutality and these killings of unarmed black men really started to make its way into the public conscious. I was able to, I guess, find that connection that I'd been searching for so long, and was able to really use those moments to, as you guys have stated, go back into my life and really have an honest conversation about the experiences that I have had, that for the most part I either ignored for the levels of racism that they were, or just flat out didn't realize it, because it was something that in some ways I had been trained to never even see on my radar. And now it's in my 30s, it's really become something that is quite prevalent, because so you're aware, I'm married to a white woman, and bonus points, she came along with 2 kids from a previous marriage who were also white. So I am a stepfather to 2 white children, and it's a trip, guys. it's a real trip.
You just blew my mind. That's wow.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
But it's tough to describe the constant in the back of my mind voice that is always wondering whenever we go out to a park or I'm just walking home with them from school, if the wrong person just thinks that something is up, what could happen from there? I often try to tell the kids, like, if somebody asks you, "Are you okay?" Don't joke around with them and say, "Oh yeah, I don't know who this guy is," because it could turn into a bad situation very quickly.
The fact that you have to teach them that is just, oh my goodness.
Well, it's good though. It really is good, because if I wasn't here, I feel like they very well could just go through their lives being completely unaware of the plight that other people who don't look like them have to go through.
Yes.
And it's while there are hard conversations, it's the rewards from those hard conversations make it all worth it, really, in the end.
I will say, I think that, like, God bless you. I think that, like, this is what the future sort of depends on. It depends on a group of people that are predicted by 2030 to be mostly mixed race individuals. Mm-hmm. It allows for situations like yours where those two children are going to have a face for the thing that they maybe wouldn't understand otherwise.
Yeah.
And so their actions will be, first and foremost, how will this affect Patrick? Like, I have an actual human being to place this onto, you know. And again, it goes back to even like the LGBTQ sort of thing. Like, people always say, like, "Oh, I don't know anyone who's gay," and I'm like, you do. And when you do, and especially if you love that individual and you can, if you have any issues, overcome them, then you're going to see every single moment through that person's eyes. It's not an exact comparison, but I remember when I came out to my parents, my mom and dad were both like, "Yeah, duh. We know." But my mom said, honestly, like, the thing that keeps me up at night is that someone's going to meet you who doesn't know anything about you other than this thing, and they are going to judge you or harm you for that thing. And that's the terrifying thing for me. And I'm wondering if, like, in some weird way, like, that's going to be your stepkid's experience, is the, like, I don't know this exact experience, but I know that it affects this person that I love. And so that's going to be the thing that drives me to make sure that, like, if somebody is speaking ill about Black people or about queer people or whatever, that, like, I'm going to be a person who stands up and says, no, you know, that's not in front of me. And we're going to be educated now on why that's a terrible space to exist in. Because, as I said to my therapist, all the memories coming back, I was like, all the microaggressions, and the thing that's the hardest to teach non-Black people is the microaggressions, that things that come off as, like, small little jokes. Because I grew up in the suburbs, and trust me, I went to an Ivy League school. So trust me, I have heard on more than one occasion that I speak white, and I immediately remind people that white people do not have, are not the sole proprietors of
English language.
Right.
It belongs to them. That I remember being at Yale, and a white woman was looking the other direction and ran into me. And then she was in the middle of saying sorry before she saw me. And then she did a little, like, and, like, grabbed her purse. And I said, "Are you kidding?"
Really?
And she said, "What?" I said, No. I saw what you just did. By the way, you're excused because you just bumped into me." Right. I said, "Additionally, I go to school at that school across the street right there. And they decided that my hardworking parents didn't even deserve help sending me here. So how dare you think I want your stanky ass purse?" And she's like, "Well, I just didn't know that's what you did. And so go on with God today. Go on with God today." Because you know, luckily I was with another Black person. But I've had moments where, like, I'm like, okay, we're being followed around this store. And my friend will be like, no, we're not. I'm like, watch this. Hi, can I help you? And then we have to play out the whole experience. I said, when I got in, when I was in high school, I had one English teacher, my junior year of high school, who I wrote a paper on race. It was a position paper. You had to do the pro and the con, and then you had to do the like, this is my opinion. And each piece of this paper had to be turned in to be approved by her, to be graded, because it was, the final paper was like 60% of your grade in this class. I turned in each section of this paper and got A's. I turned in the completed paper and I got a C. And immediately was like, what the hell? And she said, oh, well, for a person with such strong opinions, I felt like your final opinion was a little wishy-washy. And my final opinion was basically that after presenting the pros and cons of racism throughout American history, that we have come a long way, but there's obviously still a lot of work to do. And she decided that that was wishy-washy and gave me a C. Now, here's what she didn't expect, because she judged me based on my skin color and did not understand that, like, I come from a mighty family of fully wonderful individuals, and my parents are soldiers. And my parents were like, what happened? Tell me everything. Leave no detail out. And I was like, here's every detail. Here are all the receipts, because you taught me to keep receipts. So here's every single piece of paper that I've turned into this woman this year. And we went into the office, and she proceeded to try to paint a picture of me for my parents as some sort of disruptive degenerate who always had no problem giving his opinion. So I expected something stronger. Your son also cannot write and will never go to a good university.
Wow.
I'm not going to write him a letter of recommendation to go to a good university. Because I would be lying, and he needs me to get into college, and blah, 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 blah. So we let her just build her thing.
The live is on Facebook because there's only 2 people on that.
And then my parents like crossed her, my parents sat there and they looked at me and basically were like, go ahead. And I was like, okay, great. Here are all the papers I've written for you this year. All of these papers are an A, the lowest grade is a B+. How could someone who can't write be the recipient of these kinds of grades? Also, if we're piecemealing this paper together, how could all the pieces be worth A's, but the final whole be a C? And it was interesting to watch her unravel, because I told her, I said, also, additionally, my parents know every single moment from the last year in class with you where you have stepped out of bounds and I've had to put you back in your place. So don't think you're about to enlighten them on something that I haven't already shared with them. They're here today because full transparency from me was required. So
Justice.
Have at it. Have at it. And then what's wild is, a year later, without any help from her, because I went to my other teachers, I applied to 8 schools. I got into 7. I was waitlisted at 1, which was devastating to me, because I was like, what? That's the one I want.
But you got into 7 schools?
Seriously?
Yeah. Which is, listen, overachiever.
I was
Me too. I'm an overachiever. I totally get it.
Yeah. My poor parents were like, calm down, buddy. Be kind to yourself.
I'm over here strutting around over my 2 schools. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So when the Yale letter came, we had this thing in my senior class where in English class, she would go, anyone get into any schools this week that they want to share? And I never shared, because also part of being Black is understanding that, like, for some reason, when you speak on your accomplishments, you're bragging. And so I was muted about my own experience. And one of my friends decided to share that I had gotten into all these places and that I had decided to go to Yale. And a different English teacher at the same school mumbled under her breath, well, there's affirmative action for you.
Oh my God.
And I said, I'm sorry, what? And she said, oh, nothing. I said, oh, no, I heard what you said. You said affirmative action. I said, I'm pretty certain that people like you voted out affirmative action a year ago. I said, also, with the exception of Yale, the other schools I applied to, actually, I guess out of the 8 schools, 6 of the schools had theater programs I was applying directly to, and I had to audition for those programs. I said, so I think you're upset because your son who's in this class didn't get into any of those programs. And maybe it's not my Blackness. Maybe I'm better at this than he is.
Ooh.
And then I
Exactly.
went,
Yeah.
and then a
You've been
couple of
reading
days
since high
later,
school, huh?
and then a couple of days later, I had this like, I'm still mad about this other teacher moment. And so I walked into the teacher from the year before's classroom, and I stood in the back of the classroom, and she said, "Oh, it's you. Can I help you?" And I said, "I just wanted to say hello." So I just wanted to say to this whole class, juniors, I was in this same classroom this period last year, and she just, I mean, great teacher, said, you know, she told me that I could not write and that I would never go to a good school because I couldn't write, and she would never write me a letter of recommendation. I want to tell you that I got into 7 out of 8 schools that I applied to. I was waitlisted at the 8th school. I'm going to Yale in the fall, and on my form acceptance letter was a handwritten note saying that my writing is exceptional. And part of the reason I got into the school. I said, so I guess what I'm saying is she knows everything, so listen to her. And then slowly walked out of the room. And my parents are just finding out these stories recently. Like, you know, the one they had to come in for, they know, but they didn't know about the affirmative action. They didn't know that I went back into the room. And these memories are coming back, and we're having these family discussions about them. And my mom was like, and I was like, I know, I'm sorry. In the moment, they didn't have the gravity that they have now. I didn't understand in the moment that those were awful, awful things. I knew they were wrong, but the depth of it did not register to me until I was an adult. And I was sitting back and I was like, oh, that first English teacher passed away a couple years later from cancer. The effect that she had on me was so traumatic and so lasting that when someone told me she died from cancer, the first thing that came out of my body was a laugh. Mm-hmm. And then I covered my mouth and I thought, oh no, oh my God. And my cousin who told me said, no, I understand. That's not who you are, but she did something that was so lasting to you, that was so evil to you, and relished in it when she was doing it. Didn't expect that I would become victorious in the end. Was hoping that I would lose. Mm-hmm. And to find out that, because in my brain I thought some karmic thing happened to you and you deserved that. And then I had to woo-saw my spirit and then sit down and be like, Lord, I'm sorry for that. You understand my heart, and that was not a good moment. But wow, that's a lasting trauma. That was 5 years after I graduated. Now we're 20 years after I graduated, and it still hurts me. It still affects. I went to college, even getting into college with the note on the thing, was in English classes in college, scared that I wasn't up to the standard that I should have been to be in that space. And those are not things, and that is not to say that she was not a monster to other kids. They can jump on and tell me about it if they want to, but not in that way. You're like, their race wasn't weaponized against them as a reason for why they shouldn't have been in a certain space. And as a smart kid, as a suburban raised kid, that is just the constant flow of it. And then I found myself in this weird, which Patrick was sort of alluding to, in this weird space of like, I'm not Black enough, and but I'm still Black.
Yeah.
And so white people don't think I'm Black enough, and some Black people don't think I'm Black enough, but I'm Black by sheer birth. It's my birthright. Mm-hmm. So that means that whatever I am, however I exist, whatever I do, is Blackness. Mm-hmm. And it's taken me almost 38 years to understand that. Because, you know, it's hard to find your identity when you are told that I remember we had some kids stay with us when I was younger, some white kids, my mom's friends, stayed with us while the parents were out of town. And then the friend came back and she said, oh, my mother-in-law said, well, where'd you leave the kids? And I said, I left them with the Hobsons. And she said, you left them with the Hobsons? And I said, yeah, oh no, they're not like that. They're like us. They're like good Black people. And like laughed, and my mom just stared at her like, that is to me actually more offensive than your just outright racist mother-in-law.
The covert
And now
racism.
and now we have to have a teachable moment about this, that the idea that like you're a good Black person, the idea that like knowing that white people get to be everything and all things. You can be a generous billionaire like a Warren Buffett or a Bill Gates, or you can be an asshole twat billionaire like, I won't say any more names because I won't because it's, but
John.
I'm just saying, like there are, you can also be a trailer park white person.
Yeah.
You know, but white people don't get judged by the worst of them. They are allowed to be multifaceted individuals. They are allowed to be the entire spectrum of the human experience. And minorities, and especially Black and brown minorities, are the worst of themselves.
Yeah. White people are allowed to be a few bad apples.
Yes, as someone said to me on one of my posts about this during the Ferguson rallies, and this lady said, "All I know is a Black man killed my father," like yelling at me over Facebook. And I was like, first of all, this post is not about you, ma'am. You're proving the point I was making, actually, so thank you. I said, additionally, one Black person in some random act of violence in the 80s killed your father, and I am sorry for that. But I've never villainized you for 400 years of your people killing me. I've never done that to you. So why are you on my post invalidating my Black experience because you had one bad experience with one Black person when I've had a million bad experiences with bad white people, and I've been forced every day to still smile my way through, still go to work on a set where I was told the day before, if I could just be, can you just like, just like go there, just like
Be urban.
Just like, can you just like, and I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't know. What are you trying to say? What do you want to say to me? I am. This is what you hired. I said, but then I go back to work the next day and I'm smiling, and God bless them because they're wonderful people. But on my Nickelodeon show, we had a situation, season 1. I was just Mr. Feelgood for 20 episodes. And then we had this thing happen where we had to rename the show, and we had to go back and refilm every single moment that we said our name. And we had to refilm those moments. It took 2 weeks. It was a lot. And on the last moment, we had to refilm our opening credits. And I said, just to be clear, I do not see the choreographer here. And I want to be clear with you that that's not my job. And so if we get to the point where it's time to refilm the opening credits and he's not here, I'm not teaching my castmates this dance unless you're going to pay me to be the choreographer today. And then we went to lunch, and then we came back, and they sent the first AD over to me. And he was like, "Tommy, I'm so sorry. It was an oversight on our part. We forgot to call him the choreographer. Could you please?" And I called a meeting in the middle of the set. And I was like, let me be clear about this. This is not my job. I'm going to do it right now because this is the one thing that stands between me and hiatus. After this is done, then I don't have to see y'all for a couple months. I said, but just to be clear, season 2 of this show, if this happens, it is not my job to do this. And on more than one occasion, you have made it my job, and it's not my job to do this. And oh my God, everyone came running in. The executives came down from like their offices because they were watching on the screen, and it was like, "Tommy, calm down. Everything's okay. We're sorry." I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because I've been here for 8 months and I've never raised my voice one time. Meanwhile, my castmates, whom I love, who are still to this day some of my closest friends, have gone off on you several times. This is my one time, and we're not going to make it into that. Because whether you're doing it on purpose or not, you're now making me feel like I'm irrationally angry Black man. Right. And in fact, I have a right in this moment to be upset about this. Yep. But then what did I do? 15 minutes later, I taught them the dance. I smiled and sang my way through it, and then we wrapped the season. Like that balance, that back and forth is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Something like you said, I want to add on to something that brought up a memory. I feel like, so something that white people or non-Black people can do is not gaslight us when we're telling you things that are happening. And also there's things you can do outside of social media, like talk to people about what just happened. For like, I'll give an example, like in high school, I were at AP history class towards the end of the class. And we're just talking about what are we doing outside of school. And there's a student who was involved in the debate team, and I guess they were getting their ass handed to by another school, and that school was a predominantly Black school, and they were quote unquote in the inner city. And the white student who's in the debate team, she had no problem with it, but she was just like, oh yeah, they're just really good. And she just named the school, and we all know what school, like what that means. That means that that's the Black school. And this white boy, and at the time, he was my friend, so he goes, but isn't that a Black school? And he just said it like that in a very disgusting disbelief that like a Black school, like an inner city school would be this good at debate and is on their way to like a championship debate. And everyone just got quiet and just looked at me, and then they were expecting me to be the one who voiced like my displeasure. And even my teacher, like I think it was like this long pause, no one said anything, and they were just waiting for me to stand up for myself. But I had to like I had this internal dialogue, like I have to really consider how I'm gonna say this, because this kid is really popular in the school. He's well liked. If I cuss him out, everyone already thinks I'm like this too upfront person, and I'm already have like this target on my back for people thinking I'm just this huge bitch for defending myself. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. I fully expect the teacher to do this, to say like that's not acceptable. Don't say this thing. What she did was she said nothing and then just changed the subject. So then what I did, I went to my guidance counselor, told my counselor about this, and he was upset. So he talks to my teacher, and my teacher was supposed to the next day address it in classroom. She decided not to. And I was fully aware that she was supposed to, because my guidance counselor told me I talked to the teacher. She is going to talk about it the next day. The whole day she didn't talk about it again. So like me and this white boy, and he still might. I mean, I was still in disbelief that he thought this, like, because he equated Blackness as uneducated or unqualified to just be competing, anything like that. He was supposed to have given me an apology, and he just kept staring at me. Like it was just dead silent. And so if I could say anything for just non-Black people and white people, at times you have to just say something. Don't wait for us to be the ones to be like help us articulate what we're trying to say, because we know at any time we speak up is a little violent. We're perceived very negatively by speaking up for ourselves. Adults, you are the adults in the room. Like, why aren't you not saying anything? Like, it's just a little frustrating. I had another incident like this where it was a colorism issue between me and a white boy. We're in Spanish class and we're learning our colors, yada yada yada. We all know that the color Black means Negro. And so my Spanish teacher says, we're quizzing us about the color, and somebody says negra, like Chinwe, the color Chinwe. And my teacher did not say anything. She just moved on. And everybody was like, wow. What the fuck? And what the fuck? But they didn't say anything. It was like they just didn't, like, their expression was like, what the fuck? But without saying anything. And I had to be like, I had to like laugh it off, like, I get, you're funny, whatever. But that was hurting me, because I know it hurt, because I knew it was known that it was hurting me, because later that day in the bus, somebody brought it up and said, yo, that was fucked up. I'm so sorry that happened. And I was like, wait, where were you? You could have said something at that moment, because I was so embarrassed. Mm-hmm.
No, it's exhausting. It really is, because you feel that weight of responsibility for anytime there's a moment of racism or semi-racism that happens either to you or around you, you almost, at least for me anyway, you almost feel like you just drop your head and your shoulders slouch and you're like, oh, here I go. We got to do this again. Because no one else is going to say anything. So I'm the one that has to bring the energy for this. And I mentioned it the other day on Facebook. One of the things that is interesting sometimes is when a moment of racial injustice or something like that will happen, and I'll have a white friend bring it up to me, and they're coming with all this energy and all this outrage about it, and they're super pissed, and they expect me to be at that extreme level with them as well. And they get taken aback sometimes when, instead of being at a 10 about this, I'm more at like a 4 or 5. And they wonder why. And a lot of times it's just, I don't have the energy to continually keep putting out these fires. So as weird and as awful as it sounds, sometimes I just have to conserve my energy for the things that really need to be addressed and need to happen. And sometimes it's tough to look at it that way, but it wouldn't have to be that way if we had more people carrying the weight with us and helping us to carry that load. Because otherwise, you have instances where you'll just throw up your hands and say, I've got nothing for you here. I've got nothing for you on this one. And when things like that end up being let go, it perpetuates the narrative that it's okay. So, yeah, no, it's exhausting to me.
So there's a viral video going on with this young girl who she's having a conversation with her parents. Her parents are off camera, but it was like this long, and I just watched it. I watched it and I was like, that is exactly what you need to do. Yes. I'm in the same position. So I'm in a similar position because as an immigrant, there's a weird relationship Africans are having right now. Like they're so far from, they feel that they're removed from this moment right now. And it's just like, I look at them like, but it's obvious you're Black. They're like, a cop is not gonna like check your identification, like, oh, you're from Nigeria, so you're just a different type of Black. Like I was like, what? This is still about you right now. This is still includes you right now. So I'm also in a situation where I have to keep talking to people in my community, like, and have them denounce the narrative they've had already about what the Black experience is, because their experience is so different. As being, I think like they bought into this narrative where, like we come from the country poor, and we have one generation to prove that the American dream is possible. And when they prove it, that just denounces that racism is a barrier for people. So for instance, I also admit that when I was growing up, I also bought into this narrative because I saw how my family came from Nigeria. We came from Nigeria, and we've been successful. And so I couldn't comprehend how I believe in the single narrative that if you cannot be successful in this country, it's because of your own wrongdoing. And I bought into that until before I got into college. And maybe like somewhere in high school, I bought into that narrative until then. And it was only because of a lack of like context in history. It's like this historical timeline of where we are in this country. And I think one incident where it clicked on me was when Coretta King Scott passed away. I had no idea that so for instance, I looked at her age, I was like, well, that's the same age as my grandma. and to me, like when I was hearing about Dr. King and like the civil rights movement, it sounded so far away, like it was 200 years ago. These people are far gone. And the fact that she passed away in, I think it was 2005, 2006, and that was just still in this time period where it's like, that's my grandma is her age. That means Dr. King has children that are my parents' age, and their kids are roughly my age. It started clicking that this is a very short time period, and everybody there's been things thrown at like the Black experience, like the Black people have had to overcome other barriers just to get to that one generation that can change it all. And that's when it started clicking to me. I was like, okay, like there is something going on, and it's not because somebody individually is doing something to cause their self to, live a certain life, like go through the pain of and trauma of life. And so, as I'm saying this, like there is also a conversation I'm having with people in my community and having them understand, like it's not because of a few bad apples within the Black community. This is a systemic problem right now, and you can also fall victim to this because at the end of the day, you're Black. And I like don't separate yourself from being not African, and because it's like at the end of the day, they're not gonna know that until they see your name or they hear your accent. They're like, who cares? Like,
yeah, that my best friend lives in Kansas. He is a darker skinned Black dude. He's got a white wife and almost three. The third baby will be here in August. Three beautiful little mixed babies. And he called me, and he was just he was a little distraught because somehow growing up in the suburbs, my two best friends from childhood are deeply chocolate, as I call them, men. And we have these shared experiences of like, we used to jokingly call me the ambassador because when we would go places together, I was always the one who was like, hi, we need some help, like just good old, like, you like me, don't be scared of my friends, they're good people. And my buddy has found himself now, he's an executive at a really large insurance company. And, he said that one of the guys in one of their Zoom meetings tried to invalidate his entire Black experience by saying, oh, you don't count, you went to Yale, you don't know what they're going through. Mm. And he said, I had to ask him, first of all, is the Yale somehow tattooed to my forehead? Mm-hmm. Like, do you think that when someone rolls up on me who wants to do me harm, that they're like, oh, let me see your diploma before I do you harm? No, they don't. And then he said, I asked him, I said, that neighborhood a couple blocks away that no one wants to go to, would you let your kids play there? And the guy said, no, I'd be worried about them. He said, okay, I want you to imagine the feeling that you have thinking about your kids playing on that street corner. And I want you to feel like that every second of every single day. He said, because that is how that fear that you hold for your kids being in that space, that's the fear that I live with every single day. And now I have almost 3 children, and I'm going to have to now have it for myself and then for them. Mm-hmm. And, much to his credit, I'll give him a lot of credit because he pushed back. They ended the meeting. The CEO called and was like, dude was an asshole. I told him as much, like, thank you for speaking your truth. And then my friend was like, I think we need to, as a company that's based in the Midwest, like we need to release a statement that says that like we stand with this moment and with these people. And they did, which I thought was really, I was like, way to go, bud, because we, definitely weren't raised to be wallflowers, but we also, like just because we had to, we were kids who assimilated, and we figured out how to exist in a way that wouldn't make too many people uncomfortable. And I, a long time ago, gave that up, but it's been interesting to have conversations with those two people who are both married to white women and have mixed race children, and now have them go, oh, I've got kids. And everything I thought that I could do that I was falsely told I could do to help myself rise above this station in life and be more than just this Black person. I'm realizing now as I'm sitting in these Zoom board meetings that that's actually not true. That these people still are camping me in the, but you're a good Black person. Those things don't happen to the good ones. And again, when I'm driving around, when he's driving around Kansas City in his luxury vehicle, no one knows what he does. No one cares. You know, he's moving to the suburbs into a bigger house. And he was like, you know, I need to do this for my kids because the education system's better in the suburbs. He was like, but I'm also terrified because my neighbors, we were joking about housing prices because I was telling him that he bought a freaking mansion for $700,000. And I was laughing because I have a townhouse in LA. And my townhouse costs more than his house.
I was gonna say it's probably just as much.
Yeah, and he's got 6,000 square feet and 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms in like land, and I've got 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms and like 1,500 square feet. You know, could have done worse. But he said, "Well, yeah, you pay more, but my neighbors have Trump flags." You know, and I was like, Yeah, I'll pay the higher, I'll pay the higher price. But I do think what we're learning now is that like we have to be even more suspicious of, and not to overgeneralize, but que sera, sera, it happens to us. I'm going to speak in generalities right now, but like you have to be very cautious right now of the enlightened liberal white person. The situation in Central Park was such an example of something that's happened to me, that's happened to many Black people that I know, when they're correct and the majority raced person doesn't want to be wrong. We stood outside 2 nights ago with our flashlights for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence for George Floyd. And it was interesting because I've lived in my home for 8.5 years. There's 5 units in my building, so I know all of my neighbors because we have our HOA and we have meetings and we hang out. But the houses that are in my neighborhood, none of them have ever spoken to me before. And standing out there with the flashlight, the lady across the street was like, "Hello, hi. What a moment, huh? What a great time. I'm so happy we could be a part of this movement. I wish we could be downtown with everyone. It looks so great down there. But with the coronavirus, hi, I'm Kathy, and this is John, and this is our son Skip, and then our dog's barking. That's Lou barking in the house, and it's just so nice to meet you." And my sister and I were like, "Nice to meet you as well. Wow, this is a long time. I don't know if you've done it, but 8 minutes and 46 seconds on my own feet, standing with a flashlight, was agony." Because I was like, I'm actually just doing this because I want to. I'm trying to imagine the situation that man was in. And also now I'm trying to like assuage your white guilt that you're having. Right. Because you're like, "Oh, I have Black neighbors I've never spoken to." And then I turned around and my partner was gone. And I was like, "Where the hell did he go?" And 9 minutes later, I came back in the house and I said, "Babe, what happened?" And he was like, "I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to do it. Like, you haven't spoken to any of us in the whole time we've lived here. In fact, when we've parked our cars in front of your home, you've given us looks. You've done the things people do when you're like, what is that? Who are they? Should they be here?" And now you want to make yourself feel better by holding up a flashlight and being like, "Look at us. Look what we did. We wish we could be downtown." And it's like, cool. Right now, it is in vogue. It is the zeitgeisty thing to do, to like preach the Black Lives Matter and post a Black square and post happy birthday to Breonna Taylor and justice for Breonna Taylor and all of those things. But the simple fact is this: as has happened countless times in moments like this before, the world will eventually move on. And what are you going to do then? Because I can't pretend like these things aren't happening. I don't get to move on from it. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know how to create a situation in a world where I'm not scared to leave my home, or my body doesn't tense up when I'm driving my car and a police officer drives by me, or I drive by a police. I don't know how to stop that. And I don't get to stop thinking about it. So I don't know what the answer is in a macro level, but at the micro level, all of this attention is great. Where will you be in a week? Where will you be in 2 weeks? Where will you be in 6 months when the news cycle has moved on? The most encouraging thing about this moment has been that these corporations are speaking out. A couple of them have slowly taken those bold statements off their social medias, but the majority of them have not just made statements, which was groundbreaking on its own, but the verbiage, the actual word usage, the Disney using the word killed, Ben and Jerry's using the word murdered.
Yep.
That is so powerful, and it's so helpful in a movement. I said one of the first people to speak out was Nike, and I know people want to say whatever they want to say, but I said, as a queer person and as a Black person, whether it's been focus grouped or not, simple fact is Nike for years has been supporting gay pride, has a whole line of gay pride merchandise that benefits different causes. It's part of the reason why I'm nobody in terms of my fitness, but I always wear Nike because I feel I like this. And then with Colin Kaepernick, who people want to talk about, peaceful protesting, this is not the way to do it. The man kneeled. He spoke to a military person and said, I want to know the best way to respect the flag, but show that I'm protesting. And the man said, on the battlefield, when we lose a soldier, we take a knee. You can do that. And it shows the respect that we would show on the field. And he did that. And he was villainized for that. Villainized for it. Lost his whole career. Nike stood by him. They burned their Nikes. Someone sent me a picture today talking about, we shouldn't be burning businesses. Someone sent me a picture today of a group of white men laughing and having a good time while in front of them a Black body is burning. White families used to go to the park for picnics on Sunday while someone was being hung. Our selective memory about what violence is and who has inflicted violence upon whom is also exhausting. I think that if anything, the Black community should be applauded for it only coming out in bursts. For it only coming out in bursts, because it really is a situation. It's a situation that could be volatile all the time. And if not for the grace of God, would that energy not pour out? You want to talk about violence? When you think about the Tulsa riots, which if you haven't seen The Watchmen, people watch that.
Oh, so good.
I mean, it's such an integral part of that storyline. And that's not a unique moment. It's not an anomaly. Watch the movie Rosewood. If you want to understand why a white woman pretending to be attacked by a Black man in a park is triggering, because a white woman in Rosewood pretended to be attacked by a Black man, and they murdered an entire town of Black people. And then after it was done, she was like, oh, I'm lying. I actually was with this other person. I just didn't want to get caught, and I'm sorry. And there were really no consequences for that. Emmett Till, same story. And that woman just went to her grave and was like, oh yeah, I made it all up. There were never any consequences for that. And you want to be mad about an insured building. I don't particularly care for burning down buildings. I don't think that the majority of the people doing that are even really focused on what this cause is. I know that for a fact. But check yourself if you're more enraged about a target than you are about the person or the persons, because that target will be rebuilt for free. That man no longer exists. His mother, father don't get to see him anymore. His daughter is raised in a world without him, 6 years old, and he's gone. So what are you going to do to make sure that in a year from now, we're not back in this same spot watching a damn video that enrages all of us and then we're back to the streets again. The thing that's happened right now that I think is really interesting is that we've all been locked in our homes for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And people keep asking what's different about this. And I think what's different about it is we have no choice but to pay attention because the distractions are gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you're sitting at home and you're consuming it, you're being bombarded with it. And my non-Black friends are like, oh my God, this you feel like this all the time? And I'm like, yeah, all of the time. The greatest performance most of your Black friends are doing is looking like they're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When actually they're walking around with, especially for African Americans. I mean, I think the psychology folks just said that like Black people, Black men have PTSD in this country. You know, that like, so imagine you've seen people like you in nonviolent moments being arrested by police and their lives were ended for no reason. So why would you be docile? Why would you willingly give yourself to these people? Why wouldn't you think, oh my God, this could be the end of me? And then have your body and your mind and your spirit respond in whatever way it wants to that moment, because you've been conditioned by proof to know that this could end badly for you. That because of cell phone videos, now people that don't look like us know this happens.
Yeah.
But let's remember that Rodney King was beaten on tape, one of the first times we watched it on tape, and the officers were acquitted. And a jury watched him do nothing and be beaten senseless.
Yeah.
So what do you do? As I wrote on Facebook, I said, what do you do? What is the answer? Because my kneeling wasn't good enough for you. It was not the right way to protest. Every step in between was the wrong way to protest. Now we're in the streets and it's the wrong way to protest. How? So what am I supposed to do?
All of it's just deflections and ways that that people attempt to avoid talking about what the real problem is. You don't want to talk about how Black people are targeted by the police and how racism is still very much an issue. So you argue about the flag and whether or not it's disrespectful to the flag. Although, even though, as you just pointed out, Tommy, Colin Kaepernick clearly explained in very specific detail why it wasn't. Oh, well, you've got us on that. Okay, so we'll argue about why you shouldn't be rioting or looting. Okay, well, you're that upset about buildings being burned down to the point where the Philadelphia Inquirer has a headline in their newspaper that says buildings matter too. When it comes,
inanimate objects matter too.
Yeah. It's seriously. Corporations are people too, my friend.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Black people being persecuted, silence. Oh, well, because that's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about that. So I'm going to make this about something else and hope that you follow along with me until the point where we just argue around in circles until, as you say, Tommy, eventually a week, 2 weeks, a month passes and the news cycle has chewed it up and spit it out. And now we forget what in the world we were talking about in the first place, which was a Black man who also an argument that they tend to discuss, and by they, I mean Candace Owens in this particular instance, is talking about the character of George Floyd, which has zero to do with the immediate circumstance of him being prone on the ground, not fighting back, having his life taken away from him. That's what we're talking about. That's what the issue is. You can try and deflect and lead me on with these carrots and all these other different directions. No, you need to stay focused on what I am saying to you and listen to what I am talking about here, which is a man was killed in the broad of day on videotape, on video camera, whatever, and no one did anything to help him. No one saw it as anything that was remotely out of the ordinary. There's just something so galling about the fact that the man had his hands in his pockets while he had his knee on that man's neck, nonchalant about the fact that he was taking this person's life. And it just speaks to how little the Black lives are valued, in particular by the police. And it's maddening when you hear people talk about all lives matter. And I just can't wrap my head around the level of how self-centered you have to be to hear someone say to you, Black lives matter, and you are offended by that. Black lives matter. Whoa, whoa, whoa. All lives matter, man. All lives matter to me. Well, do they though?
Do they though?
Yeah.
Because you saying that makes me feel like either you have a reading comprehension problem or you do not care.
That's the second one.
Exactly. Exactly.
I said you got people out here who like, I know some of my friends' parents voted for Trump, and their justification at the time was, well, we're Catholic and we don't believe in abortion. And I was like, cool. So we just ignore all the other things that go against God according to the way you view things. We're just going to ignore everything else this man's done wrong, and we're going to focus on this. And then my question to you is, then why the hell don't you give a shit about the lives once they come out of that canal? Like, you're fighting so hard to protect a fetus, and then the fetus is born, and now it's Black and brown, and now who gives a crap? You know, one of my friends sent me
Go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
I challenge some of the people who have been adamant about being pro-life over the past week, and then it deflects to Black abortion numbers, which is ridiculous. So, but yeah, a lot of the pro-life, the pro-Trump, even this week when he did the most disgusting thing, I didn't think it could get more disgusting, but he did the most disgusting thing he's ever done as president, and people are still like, well, the protesters were rushing them, you know, like pushing these, I think that's what's angered me the most this week, pushing these false narratives and not giving the entire story, saying that George Floyd was a criminal, but not saying that he did his time for the crimes he committed. He did his time. He came out.
But also, who cares?
Yeah,
also,
I'm telling that part of the narrative. And yeah, nobody cares, but it's like, if you're going to push the narrative, tell the entire story.
Yes, but that's not what they do. Like, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, we watched one of those Fox News crazy people like spin a narrative in real time where he took this moment and then basically said that actually more white men have been killed by police officers than Black men. So Black people and the Black Lives Matter movement are trying to use a lie to overthrow this country and take power.
And we're all
and I was like,
don't forget that.
And like in real time, like I've actually cut off my news supply starting with the pandemic because it was just my anxiety levels were through the roof. So I check in when and where I need to, but I was like, no, this headline can't be true. Oh, we're doing this. Yeah. You are willing to go this far when I'm saying, like, you know, and not to, you know, draw straws here, but like, you know, when a white kid shoots up a school, we do everything in our power to de-villainize them, to go through their life and try to figure out what went wrong. Perfect home. He was troubled. They said he was troubled. He was troubled. If a black kid does something with the wrong crowd, if a Black kid does something, I told my mom, I said, one of the scariest things for me in life is that I understand that, heaven forbid, knock on wood, I don't want it, but if anything like this ever happened to me, they would lose their minds. I've never even had a detention. So how are you going to spin that narrative? How are you going to spin the narrative when you can't find one tiny skeleton in the closet to say, well, what happened to him is awful, but you know, he did do this thing one time.
Of your relatives. They'll go into your family, dig in their skeletons.
I mean, and that's the thing though, my parents don't have skeletons. So you'd have to retch back to like a auntie. third,
Yeah.
you know, sorry. You'd have to be like, oh, his step auntie, you know,
So
did
far-fetched.
time in 1985 for, you know, but like these are I told someone, I said, the scariest thing about what's happening, and this is not an American issue, by the way, it's global, but what the scariest thing that's happening in the world is that the majority is realizing that the minority is waking up and also growing, and that the minority is going to take over the majority. And so you've got these little tiny fires that are being relit because it's dying. It's like you're looking at your own death, your own destruction, and this is the fight back. If you can twist the narrative where white people are victims in this country, where the Justice Department of Donald Trump is actually investigating white hate crimes, like that's one of your focuses, is that we need to make sure we're talking about true crimes, true hate crimes, which are against white people and religious people. And you're like, are you kidding? You're serious? Okay, Donald Trump is, the day that Barack Obama was elected, I remember sitting on the foot of my bed and I was like, I can't believe this is happening. My mind is blown. Also, a few minutes later, gay marriage was banned in California. So it was a very weird night for the parts of my body. Half of me was like, yes, the other half was like, what? But I remember sitting there, I've got pictures of like the TV screen and we're all cheersing. And then I remember watching his acceptance speech and I didn't breathe. I was not breathing. And I looked around this room and there were a bunch of Black people in this room and none of us were breathing. And then when he finished his speech and walked off the stage, we all exhaled and we started laughing because we realized we were all having the same shared experience, which was, please don't kill this man. Please don't take this.
They were walking in that parade. I was like, oh my God.
Thank you. The parade. I don't think I've ever felt more anxiety watching something in my life than when him and Michelle.
Don't get out the car.
Oh my God, yes. I collectively had the exact same feeling. This was like, oh my God. I held my breath. I'm like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen?
When? Please, God, no. And then I said the next morning, that night we went to bed and I looked at my partner and I said, things are going to get really bad now, aren't they?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay, because they were already feeding this narrative of post-racism America, because we elected a Black person. Way to go, us. Bravo. Look what we did. We've conquered racism. And then I was like, what's going to happen now is there are these dormant humans who in the 1964, 1968 Civil Rights Acts, they were pushed up into the hills and they've been living up there in their little worlds. And now they need to come down from those hills because their country has been taken.
And they did.
And we started to see it at their country. And we started to see it. Yes, we started to see it at the end of Barack's presidency with that whole cattle ranch thing in Nevada, where they were just like anti-government, blocking the road, like all. And I was like, yeah, this is. And I remember saying to one of my best friends, she said, well, explain to me what privilege is. How do I know what privilege is? This is 4 years ago. Actually, exactly 4 years ago. And I said, privilege is you standing in front of me as a white female and telling me that there's no scenario in hell where you would vote for Hillary Clinton because Bernie was your guy. So fuck it all because she's a crook. And in that moment 4 years ago, I said, this is privilege. This is privilege. I've never in all of my voting life, my parents have never in all of their voting lives gotten to just vote strictly on a strict set of principles. We've had to look at the politicians who were presented to us and decide who was the least likely to kill, maim, make our lives worse, who was lying the least to us.
That part.
So in 2016, I went in and I voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton because I was like, I actually know that there's something worse.
Yeah.
And so many people did not do that. And now here we are back in the same space 4 years later. We keep digging new bottoms. Every time I think we've flatlined, we find a new deeper level of hell to descend to. And I'm still hearing people who are using even this moment to be like, well, if you would just vote Bernie Sanders in, who the F cares? At this point, there is one person who is a nightmare human, who's doing irreparable damage that could last for generations. Your principles don't effing matter right now. And if you need to be reminded of that, talk to a Black friend, talk to a queer friend, and you know what? Talk to a gay Black friend, because honestly, we're having many conversations in the queer community about white privilege and racism within the gay community, because it is rampant and it is awful. And for the first time ever, they're having a Pride and Black Pride solidarity march.
Oh, good.
Here in LA. And even that is running into issues now, because people are upset that like the white pride, which has never really extended its hand to Black pride, is doing this, but have sent a letter to like the police basically saying, we've been doing this for 50 years. You've always worked with us. Here's our plan for the day. We plan to keep it peaceful. We are protesting police violence against Black people. And now there's people who are upset that they reached out to the police. And I'm like, but that's what they've done. They're, again, full circle. There are going to be no right answers right now. I think the symbolic gesture of making a traditionally white pride moment about not just Black queer people, but about Black lives in general is a huge step for a fractured community. So I it's all just mine. And again, every time I have this conversation, I end it the same way, which is just, I don't know what.
But you said it yourself. We have a common enemy. You know, we have this person who is just like, I mean, I for me, I'm seeing this as like a thing that we all united since 2016. You know, we've all just from November on, we're like, okay, well, we know that he's going to be a problem, and this is going to be an issue in the next couple years, 3 years, 4 years, you know.
And now I have to understand too that liberal people, and this is the beauty and also the struggle of liberalism, is liberal people can be fractured. They can be divided because there are levels of liberalism. Conservatives just fall in line and they twist their logic into whatever crazy
weirdly
contortionist thing.
It really
a cult.
It's wild to watch.
Yeah.
They'll be like I said, my friend's parents were like 4 years ago, were like, I would never vote for Donald Trump, even if he were the nominee. And I was like, okay, let's talk again in November. And then in November, it was, well, you know, abortion and we're Catholic. I was like, yeah, you're going to twist and you're contorting that body. But with liberals, it's like, there are ways to be liberal. You can be too liberal. You can be not liberal enough.
And like everything
at the end of the day, like, until there is a viable third party option in this country, if you write in a name that's not one of the two lead candidates, you've wasted your time.
Yep.
If you vote for a third party candidate, you have wasted your time, you have wasted your vote, and you put a vote in the column for the bad guy.
Yep.
And that's just what it is. And I would love to be idealistic, and I hope that one day we can change that situation. But until we do,
that's our voting system. Yeah.
That's our voting system. And if you don't vote for the person who is the lesser of the two evils, unfortunately, there's no other way to put it than that, then like, you are contributing to the problem. I have friends now that are in these streets hardcore, and I'm quick to remind them on occasion, and one of them is a Black dude, that he wrote in Cookie Monster on the 2016 ballot.
No.
So let's not do that again. Right?
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect segue to what can be done that's long term. And you guys are right. It's voting.
Yeah.
It's going out there. And I remember Patrick had mentioned like, oh, this is a great time to register people to vote if any of you guys are involved in that aspect. And just the lesser of the two evils should be exactly what it is. Yeah. It's voting. That's the best way to vote. And it's not just on the presidential level. It's the mayors, the governors.
Locally,
vote people out who are perpetuating the problem.
Yeah.
Yes. If you don't like the I forgot her last name, but her first name is Jackie. She's like the DA of LA, and people hate her because she's a Black woman who stands firmly with police and often has not pursued prosecution against police for different things. I'm like, cool, guess what? Next time she's up for election, get her ass out of there.
Yeah.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
You know?
I tell people all the time, I've been worrying about November for well over a year now, because
Why do you say that?
come to the idea, well, people need to come to the honest realization that it's going to get worse.
Oh yeah.
It really is. A dying star is brightest right before it goes out, you know, and the way that things have been in our country, and this America that conservatives keep wanting to get back to, that they consider great, is dying, and they are going to fight like hell.
Yes.
It's not going to be given. Things are going to get nastier. It's going to get worse and worse and worse leading up to the election, and people need to steel themselves to that reality.
Yeah.
Because don't come to me in December if what's his face, I'll just say that, has won again, and talk about how I had no idea that was possible. I didn't think that was going to happen. I just assumed that, you know, everybody was on the same page on this. I remember it was right after he got elected the first time, or the election night. I saw somebody posted that this election feels like the time in school where you've done your part of the project, the work for the presentation, but you don't know if anybody else has. And I hope that everybody else has done their part of the homework for the assignment, so that we don't get up there in front of the class being the world, and shit our pants again like we did in 2016.
But then it goes back to being challenged again, you know, and we learn and we develop and we grow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. This November it's going to be. We're already making history as we're speaking, but at the same time, there's going to be even more history in the future, you know. I mean, thank you guys so much for...
So takeaways, I guess, just to kind of conclude it. Go vote.
Yes.
Go
vote. And when you ask your Black friend, or if you don't ask and they tell you what their experience is, believe them.
Yeah.
Don't question them.
Yeah.
Don't question them. Don't try to justify what they're telling you by trying to explain a way that it might make more sense. Just say, my God.
Because
and
it's
what
not
can
about
I do
you.
to make sure that it's not about you?
Yeah.
It's not about you.
That's such a great way to put it, because it almost strikes a similar chord to the Me Too slogan of "Believe women."
Yeah.
Yes.
Believe Black people. When we tell you that something is happening, don't excuse it away in a similar way to how women for so long, their experiences were swept under the rug, or belittled, or excused away as, oh, why'd you put yourself in that situation, or why were you dressed like the way that you were? In the same way that Black people are told with their encounters with police, oh, why didn't you comply? Or if you had just done what they had said, none of this would have happened. And it puts the emphasis on the Black person to need to change something about ourselves that we shouldn't have to actually be concerned with. It should be on the people who are in the position of power to come to terms with the fact that the way that they wield it is, for centuries now, has caused a divide between themselves and the people that they're supposed to be protecting and serving, that I don't know how it ultimately will get solved and how it will ultimately get fixed. But I know that we can't keep doing the same things that we've been doing up until this point, because before long, it'll be fill in the blank on the next name that we're talking about rest in peace
Yeah.
for. And it could be any one of us, and I don't want that. I'm tired of that.
Yeah, and I think to add to that would be just, this is the time to not be silent. Don't be afraid that you're going to offend somebody or whatever. Protect. It's up to non-African Americans to stand up for when they see injustice as well. We shouldn't rely on you guys to fight only for yourselves. Like, we need to fight for you guys too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Tommy said, we can't do this alone.
Yeah.
No,
We've been trying.
Yeah.
Kristi, do you have anything to add for takeaway or Chinwe? Anyone?
Please. Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had to turn my video off because
You're
I
fine.
got a duty today. But takeaways, definitely vote, and don't just focus on the presidential election. As you have seen in the past couple of weeks, if you've been paying attention, that mayors matter.
Yes.
You know, people at the local and state level matter. Governors definitely matter. So yeah, vote in every election. Also, mimicking a lot of what people have said. Listen more than you speak, but when you have the chance to speak loud.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
So
Don't question.
I don't want private messages. I want you checking your friends in those comments.
Yeah.
I don't want performative gestures. I want permanent gestures. You know,
Absolutely.
so all of that, you know, just we need, like I said, we need backup. And I'm for the first time, I feel like we have that, but I want it to be past this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not let it repeat. Yeah.
For me, the takeaway is, aside from everything that everyone said, is real change can happen offline. And I don't want another incident where something racist does happen, and then your first immediate thing to do is to defend the person who oppresses or who spoke out, who spoke that word. There's been a number of occasions where something didn't feel right, and I expressed it, and the first thing someone would say is, "Well, you don't think they mean it like that, do you?" So I think if the thing you can do for us or for marginalized individual is have the uncomfortable conversation. Do not gaslight us. Continue to speak out on behalf. Advocate for us, and just do more than just lip service.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. We've gone 2 hours.
I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, this is perfect. Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Anytime. Absolutely.
I hope it was helpful for you guys too to hear each other's perspectives. It was very helpful.
Definitely.
It was very helpful for me too.
Thank you for this. So this is like the first time I actually spoke out loud, because a lot of the things I think the conversation I've been having is through like text message or through emails. This is the first time I actually had to verbalize or hear more of like, hey, this is how we're feeling. This is how we're dealing with it. So thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we would love to have you guys come back too.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll let you know if you guys want to.
We want guests coming and going, you know, and we can't hear just my voice and Christine's, you know.
You were very boring.
Yeah, I'm very boring.
No.
Definitely an ongoing conversation.
Kristi, I'll be there on Saturday in Shreveport.
Okay, I will see you there.
Yeah. So keep on fighting, and
Thank you.
you guys are heard. We listen.
Vote.
And hope everybody listened and everybody vote. That's how you can change things. Vote, make this a long-term change.
Make it long-term. Remember, most of the places that, most of those swing areas that Donald Trump won, he won by such a small margin that if the people who should have voted, we wouldn't be in this space. So your vote really does matter.
Because if you vote for neither, it's going to go to the opposing. So that's just how it works.
Yeah, but thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Love.
So we're gonna, thank you guys again. That has been Get Realisms podcast. And I guess that's a wrap, you guys.
That's a wrap.
Yeah.
in films, we say that's a wrap. So
that is a wrap.
Yes.
Bye,
As-
everybody.
All righty.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
You check on your black people.
Yes.
Oh,
All right.
thank you, Patrick.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye, Chinwe. Bye, Kristi. That was
Yeah, no,
amazing.
that was wonderful. That was probably the most that was like everything that I've wanted and some, you know. That show, those guys are great. Patrick, Chinwe, Kristi, Tommy, everyone. I mean, you know,
it was just cool
that
because
was fantastic.
it was a plethora of different perspectives. You know?
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess our time is up, Christine, and we're going to stop the live stream here.
Alrighty.
So, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, Get Reelisms podcast, getreelisms.com, Christine Chen on Facebook, Moth to Flame Films, youtube.com/moth2flamefilms.
And Adam.
And Adam, Adam Chase or Adam the Chase on my social medias. And yeah, guys, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for chilling. Bye bye.
We'll do it again soon.
Yeah.
2 p.m. every Friday.
Okay.
All right.
That was the live podcast. That was great, Christine. I'm so glad you were able to get those.
That was
on.
amazing. I just thought that like it.